So I don't want to get too bogged down into that, but the next point that I was going to make is, okay, you heard the environmentalists don't really have so much of an issue with this, or they have at least some other areas we could explore. Indigenous peoples in the area, in this specific area where this lithium deposit is, were chased here in 1865, where they were massacred by the US cavalry. And they say it's a historical site. And while the land is owned by the Bureau of Land Management, the tribes say it has been stolen from local people, and that local members should get to decide how it is used instead of corporations making those decisions. Lithium Americas argues that there is no evidence that the massacre happened on this site, and that's the court battle that they won, which gave them approval to go dig. In the eyes of the tribes, this is a textbook example of Native people being ignored, this time in the name of preventing climate change, and they're calling it green colonialism. The mine itself is in its infancy, not much has happened yet, and the tribes fear that this is just the beginning, and they're right. Lithium Americas is clear about their ambition, and they're not the only player in the space. More will come to this area. They don't own the whole lithium deposit. And this is a quote from the company, there has to be more lithium in the United States if it's going to be self-sufficient. There has to be more development. And that means that this entire beautiful mountain pass, all of the geodiversity, all of the biodiversity will be lost to save the planet. That's the kind of the positioning of this. And I don't really know where to go from there.
Jamie. I know. Well, I think that's really strange. I mean, America's not known for sacrificing native peoples for its own ambitions. It's like a unique development. I mean,
21st century problem.
Yeah. It's we've never done that before. We've never decided that we needed gold, and there were native peoples in the way, and those people needed to be moved aside in order to get at that gold. That's an interesting thing that's happened. I guess that did happen though, didn't it, Jamie? That did happen. So this has happened before. In fact, maybe we have a pattern of this.
That's what they're saying.
There's a pattern of this, huh? And it's interesting. The court was like, "Hey, there is a pattern of this from a historical standpoint."
But you can't prove that this is the site that this atrocity happened on, so no big deal.
Well, I do think that's wild that there's a story passed down by the tribe, and yet there are no historians that were available for this trial to back up what they're saying. I mean, that's interesting. That is I just feel like there's a historian for everything, and even tribes probably have their own historians, accredited historians. I'm surprised that there was not a historical record of this particular slaughter. Even because I was saying the cavalry. The U.S. military is fraught with deception, especially during this era, and propaganda in terms of moving Native Americans out of the way in order to get at homesteads and take the land out west because of our manifest destiny. This is what you learn very early on in American schooling. One of the first things you learn is a manifest destiny without the other half of that coin, which is all the people that had to die.
Yeah.
In order for that manifest destiny to manifest.
Very romanticized.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. That's a freaking understatement. That's a fracking understatement. But along with that, I'm just shocked that there were no military records at all of that massacre. There were no military records of the incursion, no military records of military patrols at the time that were stationed near this town.
I also don't know how precise it has to be. It's not like the military had, a GPS signal and they're like, these are the coordinates for this massacre. Like the lithium deposit is probably on a very specific spot. And they're like, we're going to mine here. And if it's like 20 miles somewhere, I guess they could argue it could have been here. It could have been 10, 20 miles away, and in this vast mountain pass, 20 miles may sound like a lot, but it's probably not.
No.
Or I'm making that up. It could be.
No, I know. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And so these legal teams for these major corporations, especially in energy and mining, these are very wealthy companies, and they can make very good arguments, I'm sure. And this isn't their first rodeo. So,
it's a funny thing too. There's actually, and I'm not going to get too off topic with this, but there have been a lot of interesting articles I've read, basically chiding the modern American justice system with judges in these particular issues of historical context, because the way judges sort of act and preach, it's as if they are historians. and they are not. And they basically, you're not taught in law school necessarily the context of like the historical context for when a particular ruling was enacted, or like in terms of just how people lived, how people might have viewed their world. Without that nuance, you can make a lot of mistakes as a judge. Now, I'm not saying that any of that happened in this particular instance, but it's interesting to see a tribe lose based on this historical event, and then to also just an American legal system combined with the corporations were able to win out. Exactly, it might be on a technicality like that where they're like, well, the actual people died 6 miles from here, and therefore that's enough space because of the way we look at land use, as opposed to the way that the Native Americans might have looked at land use. They might have said that this is still on that land. The people might not have been murdered here, but this is part of where that settlement either hunted or did some sort of ceremony, and because they were killed, the ceremony could no longer be take place over here. So it's all intertwined. It could be something like that.
They weren't airdropped into this slaughter. They were chased. So it probably is like this route. And then, let's be honest. You don't want a 50 by 50 square of atrocity historical sites surrounded by mined land. That's ridiculous. So
well, there you go. Exactly. Something like that.
Wow. Yeah. Now, I wanted to just kind of put that aside, because I think we all know that there's that issue, and you did a really good job calling it out. But if there is this looming cloud of climate change, and we need to hit net zero by 2050, and like 45% or something like that by 2030, and this could potentially negate 29% of our carbon emissions if we can switch over to electric. That's one way to do it. And the thing that's getting in the way of that, so that we don't make ourselves vulnerable to other nations, is mining the lithium in our own country, and this is the deposit where that has to happen. Would that then say, okay, cool, sorry about repeating history, but we got to do this? Or does that then compel you to do research in other areas and say, like, yeah, we can switch over to EVs? Maybe that's not the sole solution, because we're not going to be able to mine as much lithium at home as we had thought, and we don't want to make ourselves vulnerable. So we are going to have to look at national infrastructure that is more sustainable, and look at mass transit or some other things to do it. Like where do you go from here? Because if that is the argument being made, that like this is going to happen, this has to happen, to mandate from the executive, this is the direction that we're going, and this is our best bet to cut carbon emissions. So what do we do with that?
Well, I think we know it's not our best bet. I think we can already suss out that this is probably the most profitable way of combating climate change. It's the way that a corporation can make a lot of money while offsetting our carbon, our basically our
footprint. That up before. How do you make things happen? You got to get them on board, unless you mandate someone.
Well, I think that again, the sacrifice we could make. We know full well that as a society, we could make far more sacrifices of ourselves as like everyday Americans, with regard to the way our government is either distributing money towards public transport or infrastructure, or just sort of rejigging the way that our cities are built, or the way that we develop for our suburbs. Right now, I know there are suburban developments being developed all over this country. Those kinds of contracts, all those things can be rescinded, and we could funnel those into more sustainable methods of living and building out our society. But that requires sacrifice without profitability. This clearly is something that is profitable, something that is quite lucrative, that corporations are quite keen on, and the sacrifice that is with this one, like this, I'm sure it's being channeled as there's only one way to do this, which is sort of the way you were reading it from the pieces, the articles that you're citing, is that, oh, this is awful. I'm so sorry. You Native peoples must sacrifice once again for the good of the nation, because this is the only way. And we know it's not. We know darn tootin' right that it's not.
That, right?
We know there are other ways to do this.
We can use products. We can
There's
change
tons
our
of things
product usage.
We can make real sacrifices across the board. And so we know that we don't have to do this. We're going to choose to do this because it is the most profitable thing to do, and it is the easiest thing to do for either a president that wants to win re-election, wants support from various corporations, wants to give out more government contracts in order to get that sweet election money from these companies that are going to benefit from those contracts. There's all sorts of things that are in the pocket of promoting and why a politician or the companies are going to go down this route, but that is nowhere near the only solution. It probably isn't even at the top of the best solutions. I'm going to go out there on a limb. Retraction, get at me, get at us. Let us know what the best solution is. If this really is the best solution, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and just go out on a limb and say it's probably not. And yeah, it's fine because we're sacrificing a minority and it's not affecting the majority, and it's not affecting the profitability of a corporation. That's my sense of what you're putting down.